Hey folks, how are you doing? Welcome to Michael Jordan for Dumbasses 101. We're here to talk about why the Bulls dynasty is the greatest of all time. Many people have a lot of confusion as to why the Bulls dynasty is the greatest of all time. And that's why I'm here to clear that up. First of all, let me just jump straight to the point. The Bulls had the best player in Michael Jordan. And he was the best player that ever existed on the NBA hard floor. Reason I say that is because his dedication to the game was known in legends of Chicago streets, in Chicago, in his college days, in the NBA. Players feared him. And even now, if there's a player that talks smack about Jordan, it's because they're maybe there's a jealousy, envy involved in that. So players now talk smack about Jordan. But it was in 1998 that when it was Jordan's last year with the Bulls, you saw commentary by Isaiah Thomas. You saw commentary by other legends when Jordan was playing during the games. And they all praised him. Everybody praised him. Nobody talked about any negative aspect of Jordan's game. They all praised him because he was 35 years old and he was really carrying the Bulls on his back that last year. Because Pippen wanted to be traded. But that last year for Jordan, that was really truly his last year because he made that season memorable. And of course he wanted to win the championship that year, and he did. But that season was not an easy season because when he started the season, it was a very hard fought championship. The season started out with Jordan being injured. His fingers were injured, so he had like a cut on his finger or something, and his shooting percentage was very awful compared to what it usually is. But when he ended the season, and when he ended the playoffs actually, his game was like back on top, and he was just, you could tell he was slowing down at age 35, and he did that 7-game series with the Pacers. That showed that he was really 35 years old, but his 35 and an average 35 was a way different because Jordan's body conditioning was on another level. And when people say, compare the Bulls, the Chicago Bulls, any year, you can take any year of Chicago Bulls, compare them to the Golden State Warriors. Me, I don't think there's no comparison because even with the current rules, the Bulls can adjust. Whether you take the old Bulls of Horace Grant, Scottie Pippen, Bill Cartwright, BJ, there's a level of adjustments that they can make in today's NBA. Their conditioning will be better. The Bulls, if you take the 91, 92, 93 Bulls and you pair them against the Golden State Warriors, any rules you can use. You can use current rules or you can use the old school hard-nosed basketball rules. The Bulls are still going to run them over because for them it'll be like practice. Because when Bulls practiced, they were more wild during practice. They were more competitive against each other because Jordan made it like that. Jordan made the practices so hard that an average game would seem easy. So they knew all the spots. They knew the triangle. And I think when they play against the Golden State Warriors are going to have trouble just keeping up because the Bulls were really like a well-oiled machine. And they were hardened. They were hardened through the Detroit Pistons. So even if they play with the new rules, for them it would be easier provided that you give the same conditioning options to the old Bulls of 91, 92, or 93, their bodies would adjust because they had hardened bodies, but they would just adjust to the new game. And it's not like players back then could not play like they can play today. The players played like that. You can go to the YMCA back in the day, and players be jacking up threes from outside. But that's just like a practice thing. So today's game has become really soft. It's like how you would do it at practice. Take like threes from half court or something like that. But the Bulls were mentally strong. Mentally. And if you're not mentally strong, you cannot play in the NBA with in a dominating fashion. So Bulls played in a dominating fashion because they were hardened. And the 80s hardened the Bulls through Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, and Magic Johnson's Lakers. They hardened the Bulls. So the 90s Bulls were just like a steak that was just primed to be cut. It was a wonderful time. And it was a memorable time. It brought a city together. Now Golden State in itself is a very wonderful team because it brings the city together. But when you compare it to an old school 1990s Chicago Bulls, you can feel that they're going to go out like if you watch the Chicago Bulls from the early 90s, 91, 92, 93, and you really got into it, you can feel that the Golden State Warriors were going to go out like the Phoenix Suns, like in 93. They came in with a really good team. They had Dan Marley who could shoot from outside. They had other players. They had Charles Barkley. But the Bulls were like a shark. They came in, and when they smelled blood, they attacked. And Jordan would attack the basket. You cannot have an answer for Jordan. His game was just too good. And even if you take the Kevin Durant Bulls, the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors team, KD is going to be pushed around if you play the 90s rules. If you play the current rules, provided the Bulls get the same conditioning option, their hard mentality is going to defeat KD and the Golden State Warriors because they're just too hardened. So this comparison with the Chicago Bulls and the Golden State Warriors is, if you grew up in the time of the 90s, it's lame. Because even though there's a lot of talent today and players are very advanced, but they're given that option. But one thing players are not advanced with is that hardening that's mental. And that mental hardening is like your surrounding, what your surrounding is like. And back in the day, you don't have the cell phones, you don't have the distractions, you don't even have those types of women back then, I guess, that you have available right now through Instagram, because these players are all dating Instagram models. And they have more things provided for them, but you can tell that something's not right up here. You know what I mean? Something's not right up here. They're too soft. They're given things too early. They're 19, 20. They're given millions and millions of dollars. So they feel they haven't earned it. So first few games, they're going to lose to the Bulls, the Golden State Warriors, just based on the mental aspect of it. You know. Now, will they win one or two games? Perhaps. But once the Bulls adjust, here's the thing about the Bulls. Once the Bulls adjust, the Chicago Bulls of the old 90s, they beat their opponents. They figure them out, they beat their opponents. And same thing with the late 90s Bulls. Even though they were old, their defense was very good. It was very underrated, but it was very good. And the old Bulls, you had even more battle-hardened Jordan and Pippen. And the rest of the people like Luke Longley, Jud Bushler, even though these guys look like scrubs, but when they played with Jordan and Pippen and Rodman, they had the ability to gain the same mindset, spirit of Rodman, Pippen, and Jordan. So the whole team, the Chicago Bulls, is not just about the big three. It becomes the whole team. They all become one. That's where the whole Zen master practice comes in with Phil Jackson, because he's able to unite the Bulls where they become one team and their mentality becomes one. And it's just, you can talk to any of the Bulls players, they all speak the same way in a sense of their mentality, their game time preparation. Now, when Phil Jackson was coaching the Lakers weren't as zen or as one as the Chicago Bulls, because in the 2000s, the luxury of the NBA was more, like there was more money available in the NBA, and the players had become more lazier, like Shaquille O'Neal. Like, he was a good player, he dominated, but his work ethic was not the same as Jordan. He was more corporate minded. But still, they won 3 championships in a row, which is hard to do. And I think to this day, since the Bulls did it, I don't think I can't remember. Lakers won 3 in a row, but they had Phil Jackson, they had Ron Harper, so they still carried over the Bulls' spirit, if you know what I mean. But after that, I don't think the Spurs, they didn't win 3 in a row. Golden State Warriors didn't win 3 in a row. Even the Miami Heat didn't win 3 in a row. So 3 in a row is hard to do. And Jordan did it twice. And let me tell you about this. If Jordan decided to come back in 2001, he could have been like LeBron James now. He could have said, okay, I'm 38 years old. Let me come back and play for Phil Jackson. He could have easily done that. Jordan could have easily played for Phil Jackson in 2001 instead of, being president with the Wizards. If Jordan had that LeBron James mentality. So what happens is Jordan decides to go to the Wizards. But here's the scenario. What if Jordan said, you know what, let me join Phil Jackson? Phil Jackson would have put Jordan in the same position as Kobe, and maybe Kobe would have had to come off the bench. Or maybe not. But if Jordan would have said, say he would have retired in 98, 99 season, 2000 season, 99, 2000, and then I think Jordan came back in 2002 season. So let's just say Jordan retired for that 99 year, 2000, 2001. He retired 3 years. He comes back. Kobe's starting 5. Jordan comes off the bench. But his game would have adjusted to Shaq's and Kobe's, because if you look at the 2004 Lakers, you can see how Karl Malone, who was also an old vet, played with Shaquille O'Neal. I think Shaq had a really good power forward in Karl Malone. And Malone was able to get, even though Malone was old, but he was still able to be effective that year. And then he got injured by the time I think the finals came around, so he wasn't available. But if Jordan was available in that 2001 season, the team was already good, and Jordan would have just made it even better. Because his game, his talent, his work ethic was, bar none. So Jordan, greatest player of all time. The Chicago Bulls, the greatest team of all time. And Phil Jackson, the greatest coach of all time. It's just no question about it. But it's hard to say that now, because all these great players that are in the league right now and all these stats in the league right now, it's, you can make an argument. But if you grew up in the 90s and you watched the Chicago Bulls, you cannot be amazed by that. And those who watch the Chicago Bulls, they are not impressed by anything in today's day and age. They're not. Maybe some are, but those who grew up watching Jordan, the Chicago Bulls, the 90s teams, were not impressed. Because we've seen it. We've seen greatness. And nothing can keep our attention now like it did back then. NBA on NBC. So folks, that's my opinion. Take care.